Welcome to this Dissecting Design. We're going to be taking a look at the game Power Blade, developed by Taito. Now for this piece, I'm running it a little bit faster than the normal game speed, just so we can go through things, and I'll be fast forwarding when need be. But this is, again, one of those very interesting games that came out during the early 90s, with the height of 2D action games like Castlevania, Vice Project Doom, we could even argue Mario as well. And while it may have a somewhat generic look to it, it does do things a little bit differently compared to other titles at the time. So we play as Nova here, and he is some kind of super soldier who apparently has metal legs and likes to really use boomerangs as his primary weapon. A city that was controlled by an AI has gone amok, and it's up to him to get in, disable the defenses, and knock out the AI by any means necessary. And the game itself is a bit on the short side. If you know what you're doing, it's about 30 or so minutes long. And that kind of leads into the game's overall structure and what it means to progress. So, the structure of each level is that you need to find an agent or somebody in the level to give you a key card that will get you access to the boss door. And this works the same way from Sector 1 to Sector 6. Similar to Mega Man, the game allows you to tackle any level in any order, but there is no deeper progression. Beating Stage 1 doesn't unlock anything to aid me in Stage 2, etc., etc. Instead, the only real gameplay affecting items are what you find in the middle of a stage, and we'll talk about that one in a few minutes. But as you can see, we're going through this level, and the levels themselves are obviously all hard-coded. Now, they are built around having multiple paths and a lot of kind of offshoots in terms of their rooms, and I just died right there, and that sends you usually back to a checkpoint, either the start of the level or at the agent that you found. But the rooms themselves may carry items or additional things that you can use, but the majority of things you're going to find are random drops from the enemies. Now what you saw right there was I used a smart bomb. That's the grenade icon in the upper left. You can also pick up rations that allow you to basically get a full health. It's essentially the energy tank from Mega Man. But I'm going to fast forward things a little bit further here. We'll show off the boss fight and talk a little bit more about that. And then we'll discuss some of the items in our next section. So I'm heading to the boss fight here, and you always need to get the key for that respective sector. The bosses are essentially fixed pattern design. And as long as you just keep hammering on them with your items, there's not much that they are going to pose a threat. If you do die, you will get sent back to the previous checkpoint. But once you've cleared a sector here, the level is essentially done. You will never have to revisit it again. And then you get taken back to the main menu here, or the main map, and you can choose another level to go through. So from here, I started on level 4, not because of any specific strategy or game plan, but simply because I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to quickly beat the other levels or not. This whole stream, or this play, kind of came from me just messing around with it on our 4,000 sub a day spectacular, and it turned into a full play. But let's go over the items in Power Blade now. So we already talked about the grenades and the rations. But Nova's boomerangs can be upgraded in several ways. The first is you can get multiple copies of it. Usually you can only throw one at a time, and then you must wait for it to come back. But with upgrades, you can take that up to 3. As a very interesting case, you can actually attack in all the cardinal and ordinal directions based on if you're in the air. Now, what you saw a second ago when I picked up that power suit is that Nova gets upgraded. He gets 3 additional points of health. Those are those little pips, or those squares you see on the right-hand side. And his shot now travels the length of the screen. Now, the power bar is a very weird element to this game. It's one thing that we didn't see too many platformers use back in the day. Basically, the more I attack, the less range subsequent or successive attacks will have unless that power meter charges up. The only way to increase the length of it is by picking up star power-ups that drop from enemies. If I die, the power meter goes down by about I think it's about a quarter or a 16th of its length, but as long as you're able to keep killing enemies, you will get that back fairly quickly. Now, this level is also another good example, or shows off kind of the platforming of Power Blade. Now, despite the speed being a little bit faster, Nova here is very slow. He's almost, I think he's a little bit faster than our friend, I think Simon Belmont from Castlevania. But his jumping is variable. I can control the height, I can move around in the air, but it's a very limited range. And one thing that I noticed that the developers did in this one is that they were all too happy to use his maximum jump length when it came to building gaps and design. Now, right there is a bit of a UI or a little game design, I think, mistake there. Basically, if Nova or the player is not on a ladder when they fall to a screen transition, it is considered a death pit. But this is not the same as in a game like Mega Man, wherein you can just keep jumping down pits and you're right there. And I don't know why they did that for this one, especially since we know that you have to go that way. The only rationale I could think of is that it could have been a way to keep the player in control, because you can skip a lot of these areas if you didn't have to worry about the ladder. Now right there, I don't know how it's going to make that leap. But as we said in the previous part, these levels are a bit on the maze-like situation. It does help by the fact that each area features unique aesthetics and situations, so it doesn't seem like they're just repeating or copying and pasting obstacle design. Now, as you saw right here, I'm getting the card for Sector 4, and I'm going to start to fast forward through here so we can get to the boss fight. So while things begin to fast forward through here, let's talk a little bit more about this stage and the overall level design. This is a level, again, technically we were playing this in order. We would have to do, this would be the 4th stage. So you can see that the complexity has grown quite a bit in terms of just the overall map layout. That jump that killed me a few minutes ago was certainly on the annoying side. And again, if you're not properly prepared, you are going to miss them. And you do have to use that maximum jump length or jump distance that Nova has if you want to have any chance of getting through it. But he's going to be going through here, and we're going to be trying that jump again now that I was able to luckily find the agent. And the agent and the sector door are usually on opposite ends of the map. Again, so that you're not immediately right there. Now, I haven't talked too much about the enemy designs, and I think we'll save that for as soon as we're done with this stage. Now, here I'm doing things a little bit more intelligently, making use of these moving platforms to get that leap. And again, you can see that despite the limited nature of Power Blade's jumping, they do a decent job of presenting various challenges. Although a few levels do get a little environmental or graphical heavy and can be sometimes hard to tell where you're at. Now, I do believe that for this fight, I will probably be killed on this first attempt through it. But again, the boss fights in Power Blade, they may be a step up compared to other action platformers or action games at the time, but it doesn't hold a candle to games like Ninja Gaiden or even the personality-driven nature of the Mega Man series. Again, just a very fixed pattern here, and thankfully the game checkpoints you right at the boss door. And this time, he is going to go down, even though I've lost a few of my boomerang-related upgrades. Now, one thing that's kind of weird about Power Blade is that it doesn't really do too much in terms of, like, it has a personality to it, but it's not like a strong one. Yes, I'm fighting this kind of, I don't know, we call it like a monkey robot while throwing boomerangs, but it doesn't seem to have that same brand or hook as we saw with Castlevania or Ninja Gaiden. But I'm going to move on to our next stage here, and we'll spend a little bit more time talking about the items as we head into, I believe I just went straight to Sector 6, or did I go to Sector 5? Alright, we're going to Sector 5 here. I've also increased the speed because there isn't too much in terms of talking about the overall structure of Power Blade compared to Castlevania. Because the levels can be tackled in any order, there's not that same sense of progression growth that we saw in that series. But let's talk a little bit about the enemy designs, because you've seen plenty of robots and those flying drones and stuff like that. But the enemies themselves are all built on fixed patterns. There's nothing too crazy here. The flying enemies will track you, and they can kind of get so close that they get inside Nova's hitbox and do additional damage there. Now, unlike other action games, the enemies don't grow in terms of difficulty. As in Castlevania, the enemies will do more damage to you the further you got. In this game, they usually keep to about 2 to 4. Now, keep in mind, though, that I was playing this on the normal difficulty, and I'm sure on Expert, they may have doubled or even just went 1.5 times the amount of damage. Now, one thing I just want to point out that I thought was very interesting is that this is the only level in the game where the agent or the sleeper person or spy is right next to the boss door, but handled in essentially 2 different directions. So if we went the other way first, and I went up instead of down, we would have gone to that boss door and found the agent right there, but then we would basically have to repeat this whole level. And this is a major part of Power Blade's level design, as we talked about, that so much of it are these kinds of maze-like areas that if you know where you're going, this game is very quick. But now you can see I'm going back the other way, and just using what I learned or gleaned from the first run to get to it. Now right there I used one of my healing items, and that will play a big role during one of the boss fights later on. But here's our boss here, and this is one of the standard fights, I guess, of an action game. Enemy teleports around, you only get a few frames to actually hit him, and he just repeats this pattern again and again. Unlike Castlevania, though, it's given so much of a lead time that you don't really have to worry about getting stuck in the character's model. And we just went through it fairly quickly, a few, I guess, high energy boomerangs, and this guy is toast. And with that said, we move on to the next sector. Now the game does feature a password system, which was a nice feature, but considering the length of the game, this is one of those titles I don't think you really need it for. But as we head into Stage 6, this is arguably or considered to be the penultimate level for Power Blade. And this one again throws a little bit of a twist on that progression or that curve here, with the agent now literally in the very first room, and now we're on to make our way for the boss while avoiding all these enemies. Now in Power Blade you do not get knocked back if you get hit, which is a kind of a nice touch because the game does make use of a lot of character-wide jumps, as you can see right here. But as Nova goes through this level, let's talk a little bit more about the general legacy of Power Blade. Like we said earlier, the game itself, it works, I guess. It's a workman's kind of design. It doesn't do anything too out of the ordinary, but it doesn't do anything that would be considered bad or annoying to play. The levels are just long enough to kind of help you to get lost, but not so long that it becomes a confusing mess like in Castlevania 2. But, like we were talking about earlier, the overall branding of Power Blade doesn't really, I think, hold your attention. Other than the fact that we're a man who likes to really throw boomerangs with metal pants, there's nothing here that I think holds your mind or holds your eye towards this game. Ninja Gaiden featured cutscenes, Castlevania had the whole gothic theme, and of course the gothic horror monsters to draw from. Here I'm finding metal gorillas, those things that look like the robots from RoboCop, and I'm throwing boomerangs. And chances are, if you're watching this right now, you didn't know about this game, you probably would have no idea about it. Like, it never really got a huge amount of word of mouth. Now, right there, I didn't go that way because I assumed that if it was just going to have that special item, that it wasn't going to connect to any particular room that I needed. Now, Power Blade, despite those complaints I have right there, it still was popular enough to get a sequel. And at some point, maybe we will go to that sequel, because it does actually add in more gameplay affecting mechanics to it. Now, as you can see, there's the boss door. And again, the enemies are set up just to kind of annoy you. But thanks to my ability to be able to throw in the ordinal directions, it makes things a lot easier to take them out. I believe this is, speaking about Gothic horror here, we have like kind of like a Frankenstein giant robot. And that guy did a lot of damage to me too, which I was kind of surprised about. But given the upgrades I had, it was pretty easy to defeat him. And Power Blade does, since it relies on power-ups to improve your character, it can become harder if you keep dying. But because enemies can keep dropping your upgrade material, it doesn't get as frustrating compared to shmups. Now, as we move on to Stage 3, let's talk a little bit more about if there are any major game design flaws or issues with Power Blade's formula. Like I said, the game does a good job presenting almost a workman-like design. It's neither really hard, nor is very easy either. And the levels do have a good mix in terms of environmental design, but the enemies, I think, are definitely the weak point of it, as the game repeats many of the same enemies. We've seen those robots, those mechs, the gorillas, and whatever those like little flying things are many times over, as well as these death waffle orbs as well. From a moment-to-moment gameplay standpoint, like I said, it's a very weird inclusion to have your attack be measured or be growing based on power-ups, especially in a game like this, where it can become monumentally easier or harder based on what you're getting, as you saw when I just did that diagonal bomb left throw. Now, the stage structure of the 6 levels, find the agent, get to the boss, and win, is a bit different compared to other games. Again, the closest analog I would say would be something like Mega Man. Although Mega Man doesn't let you leave a level and then come back to it. And I just wonder if that was kind of a way of making the game appear more non-linear than it would be otherwise. But because you are going to have to do the same things or the same progression on each level, it doesn't really open up in terms of an open world standpoint or a non-linear gameplay. You're going to probably, if you're going to start a stage, you're going to stick with it until it ends. Now, from an overall level design point, the game doesn't, I think, really go that far with it. This is nowhere near the same level of creativity that we see in Mario, or even with the Mega Man franchise, which each level having not only built on its own theme, but also having unique obstacles as well. Because of how limited your jump is, it kind of limits what the game could do to test you. So the majority of the challenge is just going to be getting a pixel-precise jump. Now here we have the 3rd stage boss, and really this is kind of an odd one. It's just basically kill the enemies until they just stop coming, and then the fight is won. And we'll fast forward a little bit more here, I think, just to get on to our next section. But as we move on to the final stage, which how I play it was the 2nd stage, Power Blade, again, as you've seen, it does, I think, the most with what it had available. Again, the game doesn't try to push things too far in terms of its design. These enemies repeat again, and it's a very interesting kind of corner or a pit stop when it came to 2D platforming and action-adventure games back during the NES era. Now, this stage, the reason why I saved this one for last was because I was playing it off recording, and I had no idea where I was going. And because of that, I was afraid, again, that with the original stream not going to be a full play, that I was going to get stuck here. But you saw that kind of tricky jump there, with having to jump and not hit the ceiling coming out of that corridor. It's a lot easier to do it going out than it is coming in. But when that was done, everything else just kind of came together. If you notice, I also haven't died all that much since those first spots, with a fully upgraded character, as well as having the additional healing items, this part just was a lot easier. And then I just kind of powered my way through, no pun intended. But here we go again with those fish. And I think the game could have been made a lot harder, but at the same time it could have been made more frustrating if you would have gotten stun lock if you got hit. But here we have kind of a dragon meets Sonic the Hedgehog fight. And that takes us to the end of the base game. Once all 6 sectors have been cleared, you unlock the final battle. So we're going to talk more about that here, but first, a quick shout out to our Patreon backers. Thank you to our Patreon backers, and if you'd like to continue this discussion on game design, be sure to check out our Discord channel, linked down below. As we go to the final level of Power Blade, the game doesn't really do all that much. I think this again is kind of an issue with the open nature design of it, that there doesn't seem to be any real progression in terms of complexity or challenges. I don't even think we needed a key card for this level. It's just going to be straight up getting to the end. And again, the enemies are repeating. These same level designs are kind of showing up here as well. Those hopping enemies can be a bit annoying unless you have enough power to one-shot them. But the video won't be much longer, as our little friend Noah here will make his way up. And I think we just get there. Oh, I think there's actually is a key card that we get. It's kind of hard. Again, the game itself doesn't really stick in your memory, I think, for too long. But as we go through it here, kill a mech with a boomerang very fast. That was nice. We have, again, these disappearing platforms are, of course, first seen in the Mega Man franchise, Mega Man 2. But nowhere near as challenging as it was there. And here's the final fight. Again, first we start off with a similar fight of that teleporting enemy from earlier. I was getting hit a lot there just by trying to get that right angle. But with even just 2 health upgrades or 2 health tanks, this fight was just easy. Then it seems like we're done. But wait, there's a shocking twist. There's a part 2. Just get in the middle there and attack. Again, largely a fixed pattern. Just go back and forth, shoot, and he's dead. In fact, I wasn't even sure that this was the final fight. But that's going to do it for Power Blade. A decent game. Not bad, not amazing. But just another interesting case of game development. But thank you so much for watching this Dissecting Design, and check back for daily discussions on game design here, and on game wisdom, where exactly they are in science of games, and let me know what you think about this format, and we'll see about trying out some other games in the future. But until next time, have a great night. If you're looking for another book about game design, be sure to check out my first title, 20 Essential Games to Study, out now. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoy things, be sure to do all the liking and subscribing that the kids are doing these days. Check out our Discord channel linked down below, where we hang out and chat game design, and come back later tonight for our regular streamings. But that's it, and tune in for more great content here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games.